welcome again to another episode of the Veterans History Project, brought to you by the Lawrence County Museum of History. Again today, my co-host is World War II veteran and famed author Lee Hutchinson. Lee, thank you for being with us
Thank you
today.
very much.
Really appreciate you co-hosting these with us. Our special guest today is Dick Dunlap, United States Army Vietnam veteran, and Kent King, United States Army Vietnam veteran and Purple Heart recipient. Kent, Dick, welcome.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being on the program today.
Appreciate you having us.
All right. We'll start off with you, Dick. Dick, what year did you go into the Army?
1968.
1968. Where'd you go to basic training at?
Fort Campbell.
Fort Campbell? And from there, you went to Vietnam, or did you have to go
from
to
there,
another?
I went to, let's see, where did I go? Went to Fort Raleigh for AIT, and then I went to Fort Sill. That's where my first duty station was. We sent us to Germany for 6 weeks for training, I guess, for lack of other words.
You went from Kentucky to Kansas to
Yeah.
Oklahoma.
And anyway, then we come back and then had a 30-day leave, and then I went over.
Okay.
So,
Kent, what year did you go in the Army?
66,
66. And when did you get out?
68,
And what years were you in Vietnam?
67, 68.
So you were there during the Tet Offensive.
My outfit, 11th Cav, went to take Benoit back that had been captured by the North Vietnamese regular army. And then we got to the airport back and we went to Saigon to get the Marines back, the American Embassy back. And the Marines had already recovered it. So the only time in my 13 months I had to get off my ACAV and do door-to-door, kick doors in, was in Cholon section, which is 1/3 of Saigon. This Chinese population is called Cholon, where we got our ammo from. We had an ammo dump there, and I had to get off with Lulibelle, my M60 machine gun, and do door-to-door searches.
You
Didn't care much for that.
Door-to-door searches with an M60 machine gun.
Yeah.
That's
I
tough
showed you a
business.
picture of Lulibelle, didn't I?
Yes. Do you still have those pictures?
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead and get them out.
I showed them to Dick.
I don't know if we can get a picture of these. Can we get a picture of these pictures, Joe?
I'll get them afterwards.
Okay, great.
Show them to Lee. One of them is just to show you how skinny I was.
Yeah, that's,
like I said, wasn't we all skinny back then?
Well, we had to be in shape.
Yeah.
Do PT every day, right?
Yeah, of some type, yes.
One question I'd like for you, I can answer, for you to ask me, Brad. Did I join?
Did you join?
Obviously not. I still got splinters under my fingernails where they pulled me off the back porch.
So you were drafted then?
Drafted.
I was too.
You were too?
Yep.
Okay.
I tried to
What-
join the Air Force. I couldn't get in because of my eyes. My dad had had a heart attack, and so I had a year deferment because my mother never worked. I was the only one at home, that could make a living, and that run out in January. And March I was gone.
what ages were you when you went in?
Let's see, 19.
You were 19?
18.
19.
I would have been 18. I mean, if I, but like I said, a year's deferment.
I consider that I went in at 18.
Too young to know anything, to have good common sense. And
Yeah.
I tell people, nobody on this planet, unless they were there, knows what it does to the mind of a 18 or 19-year-old
Yeah.
young man. Southern Indiana Hoosier sent him over there and what he's seen and had to do in Southeast Asia. Nobody can know that unless you've been there.
Well, some kids, what we were, they'd never been down the county in their life. Bedford
I never-
Metro and Orleans, all they knew.
I lived down here and I never got to come to Bedford till I was 13 years old. I went to Fort Knox for basic training, if that was going to be your next question, and Fort Polk for AIT, which you knew where you were going.
Yeah.
Well, that's where you went to jungle training in Fort Polk, Louisiana?
Peace Ridge. It was just like being in Vietnam. If they caught you going to the toilet, they would drag you off of there screaming and hollering and beat the absolute pee out of you. I mean, it was really bad. 2 weeks.
2 weeks of intense jungle training. Dick, what unit were you with when you were in Vietnam?
That terrible, I can't remember. Well, I was at Marical. I was in Marical.
Marical Division?
Yeah.
All
yeah.
right. Kent, which one were you with?
You already know that. 11th Armored Cavalry.
11th ACR. If you notice on the
I
front,
got it all
Yep.
over me. There's the patch.
front left patch, that's the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment. That's what ACR stands for.
Yeah.
So when you hear about the Black Horse Division, that's it right there, 11th Armored Cavalry.
Brad stayed with him somewhere, didn't you? When
Well, I
you-
was on Camp Black Horse in Afghanistan as a civilian, but it didn't matter. We were over there to watch after the Taliban after they were captured by our troops. I was a captain with the Indiana Department of Corrections and volunteered to go to Afghanistan, but that'll be for another program, folks. I will be on here to talk about it. Lee's promised me that he's going to interview me at some point. But we're concentrating right now on the Vietnam veterans. But anyway, glad to have you guys. And so, AmeriCal Division, that was, what area of Vietnam was that in? I'm having trouble remembering that myself.
Kind of central, I guess. I was in Chu Lai the whole time I was there. Yeah.
Okay.
I was in artillery, and of course, when I went to Vietnam, you know, we landed in Cam Ranh Bay, and I don't know, we was there maybe 3 days at the most, and then, you know, they got orders to where we was going, and of course, our unit kind of got split up. Of course, you know, we all had different MOSs, and I think me and maybe 2 other guys went to Chu Lai, but we wasn't stationed in the same companies or anything, and, you know, once in a while you might see them, but not very often, so.
Yes, Ken?
One thing that people don't realize, when you went in country, I don't care where you went to AIT, Dick told it, but I already forgot, he'd been to so many, but like me going to Fort Polk, I was light weapons infantry, 1110 Bravo, and I fired every small arms that the Army had, and when I got to 90th replacement, 11th Armored Cav, thank God, needed 10 people, and they took me. They didn't care what my MOS was. They took me and put me in armor, 64 Charlie 40, and made a ACAV, a gunner out of me. I showed you my T-shirt, then it says ACAV gunner on a
Yes.
Maul Deuce and M60 gun shield around it. But it didn't matter what you did here in the States. When they needed people, they said, AmeriCal was pretty big. It was like MacV.
Yeah.
MacV was over storage and supplies and stuff like that. Like all of 90th replacement was ran by MacV, you know. And AmeriCal was big because we run into AmeriCal because we went to, before I came home, 2 months before I came home, we went to the DMZ to run night convoys for Marines. So we went through July and went to run night convoys for the Marines. Was they were getting shot up too bad. Our colonel didn't think we were getting shot at enough, so he sent the whole 11th Cav, largest base camp in South Vietnam, and sent them to the DMZ. So, and I told you the story about the ambush patrol.
Yes. Why don't you tell us about that ambush patrol? What was it, 4 days before you were to leave country,
days.
Ken?
Once you got under 30 days, you didn't have to go back into combat.
Yeah.
They would let you stay in base camp. And like a dumbass, excuse my language, people, I couldn't stand it. I was 19 years old, I was bored. So 4 days ago, I volunteered for ambush patrol. We went out at 2:30 in the morning to set up to ambush Charlie, and he was waiting on us. I'll try to clean it up. I never seen so much ordnance in the air in my life. It looked like a gazillion fireflies are running around out there in that field. And I was behind a stump with an M79 grenade launcher, and I said, Nina, that was my mother's name. I said, Nina, your son ain't gonna be home for Christmas because he was frigging stupid and got killed. But I made it, to the Lord will, and he takes care of dumbasses. And here I am. We call one of our gunships. K-Troop, 3rd Squadron, had 9 gunships. And here comes the miniguns and the rockets, and Charlie was gone. Couldn't even find a body.
Now, you say Charlie, for the audience, Charlie is a Vietnamese.
Viet Cong.
Yeah.
That's your name for the.
NVA is the National Vietnam Army.
And they were the Army.
Yes.
The Viet Cong was both. They had both in South
Got
Vietnam.
guerrillas and the Army. You fought both.
Yeah, I never thought about that, but Charlie was a
Enemy.
nickname for Sir Charles. They called him a lot of names that I can't put on the movie. but he was the Viet Cong. He was the guerrillas.
You see, so many people don't know a thing about what happened.
Right, I
And
never
that's why
thought
we're
about
doing
that,
this.
Ray.
We want to,
That's a
we
good-
want to know what
That's a
happened.
good point.
And sometimes we have to ask you a question or two.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Dick brought that up a while ago. I never thought about it before. People didn't understand it. They'd say, well, you went to Fort Polk, you know, how'd you end up in Armor? Because
Yeah.
it didn't matter. Once you went to 90th replacement, you were fair game for whoever
Whoever needed you.
Who needed people.
That's right.
You were not a person, but a dog tag.
There you
And
go.
they put
No,
you
just
exactly
a-
where they wanted you
Yeah,
to
you,
be.
you know, you were there. It's
And,
just another number.
You were expendable.
That's right.
And I tell you something else amazing. I bet you can count on one hand the number of people this happened to. The same guy, and he was from Bedford, and Dick met him. He joined our organization. I went through basic training with him at Fort Knox, Bob Mowry. And Doc Mowry, Donald, his brother, still lives here. Now, Bob got married because he owned another home in Florida, and he just stayed in Florida, but he used to live in Columbus. Anyway, then we both went to Fort Polk to AIT together. We was in different platoons. Went to Fort Polk, and then went to 90th replacement. I didn't have a clue he was on the planet, and there I run into him one
Yeah.
day, and we both ended up at the 11th Cav. So
Yeah, you never know. I
All
mean-
three venues that we went through in the Army together, both of us were drafted, we were together, you know. We had a 52-year reunion out here at Steak and Shake one morning, or, yeah, I think it was. Anyway, he said somebody told him I got killed in Vietnam. And I was honest. I told him I just, you know, went back to my old life and I never tried to find him. And, but he said, I said, obviously I didn't, Bob. And we hugged each other, in a tearful 52-year reunion, but went all the way through the military with him. You know, that probably don't happen very often.
No, it don't.
No, not
Usually you don't.
somebody from your hometown. like
No,
that.
no.
And I called him, and well, he joined him and his brother both. If you remember, Dick, they come to
Yeah.
three or four meetings, and then
Went back.
winter come, and he went to Florida with his summer.
Never
winter
did come
home.
back.
Never did come back. I called him one day. I was waiting on my wife before she passed away in Walmart, and I called him, and he was out west somewhere on vacation. Him and his wife. He said he thought he sold his house in Columbus. He retired from Cummins Diesel in Columbus. Is why he moved to Columbus, and he just stayed. You know, he didn't come back and never come back to another meeting. So
Well, that's the way Johnny Doan and I was. We run around way before, you know, we went to service in high school and everything else. And I got to know him. His mother used to sell eggs, and my mom bought eggs off of her every week. Well, John, when he started driving, he'd come with her just so he could drive. And like I said, we went through basic together and everything else. And you know, once we got out of basic, never seen each other again till, you know, we come back home. So, and then we ended up being neighbors for about 2 years. After I was already married, but after he got married.
that's one thing, Dick. I was telling Brad, our organization,
Yeah.
Orange County. There was something that ate at me continuously, still does, but nothing like it did before. When I started going and meeting with like Terry Sorrells and you and guys that had actually served in Vietnam, didn't, you know, and don't get me wrong, I'm not putting anybody down. They were there if they needed them to do it, but they didn't fly over or eat a cheeseburger at Tonson Air Force Base and claim to be a Vietnam veteran.
Yeah.
They were, because they were there, but different when you boots the ground.
That's right.
And-
Yeah.
I've made so many friends now, but it helped get that monkey off my back. It's ate at me for 50-some years. The stuff I seen and had to do in Southeast Asia. When I told you about the psychiatrist that I tried to tell him about, Brad about, he said, tell me one or two things that traumatized you in Vietnam, and it's so hard to talk about it.
Yeah.
I was one truck behind a JP-4, that's airplane fuel, and they shot it with an RPG rocket on convoy and set it on fire, and those guys screaming, and the smell of burning flesh. I'm about to cry now. And he started crying. In 8 days, I had money. VA disability, you know, it don't have to be physical
Well, you know,
disability.
I did. I mean, when I come back, probably not for a couple of years, but, you know, I had, I guess, nightmares.
Oh, yeah.
You know, my wife would wake me up, you know, I'd be screaming and cussing and everything on, you know, and she said, you got to see somebody. So I probably seen a psychiatrist for 3 years.
Isn't that something?
And,
Same
you know,
thing.
I mean, it helped.
Same
And,
thing here. I did the same thing. I'd wake up in night sweats back in
Yeah.
combat, tearing the bed. I just wrecked the bed, throwing shit, and you know.
Yeah.
And I started seeing a psychiatrist at Pale. His name was Wally Schellenberger, and he tried me 4 or 5 different mood-altering drugs, and put me. Finally, for about 18 months, he put me on Prozac, and it helped. He didn't much care about anything, you know, let alone what happened.
Yeah. Well, I think,
Fast.
you know, like going back to, like I said, you know, we were nothing but a bunch of young kids anyway.
Yeah.
And, you know, you maybe read about stuff like that in books or maybe seen movies, but, you know, until you lived it, you know, it's just not something you seen today and forgot tomorrow.
That's
I
right.
mean, it was embedded in you.
I tell people, if you were in a combat zone, you face death every day.
That's right.
You did, and the strain on your mind. And
Yeah. You know, you see
you tried to
friends-
do away with it,
That's
but the
very
strain.
good, Lee. That I left that out. I said every day for 13 months, somebody, and I don't know if I should say this or not, it's not vulgar, but I actually got to looking forward to it. Every day when I'd get up and get off my air mattress and drink my
Is this the
sea
day?
rat coffee,
Yeah.
you could almost heat it out of your jerry can water after it was out in the sun all day at 120 degrees. You had hot water all the time. And I'd drink my sea rat coffee, and I wanted to shoot something.
Yeah.
I won't necessarily,
Excuse me.
the bad words, you can't say it,
Yeah.
but I wanted to shoot something.
Well, you know,
And I
we
missed-
were
I
over there
missed it
for a reason.
I missed it for
You
a
know,
long
and it
time.
wasn't to go over there and, you know, party, which, you know, drugs was pretty thick over there, but, you know,
And the thing of it is, if you're in, not hand to hand, but I never done any of that, not even kicking the doors in, but what people don't understand, everybody, probably 90% of the people in Bedford and Lawrence County carry. I do myself. I just know I can't take it in the courthouse, so
Yeah.
I left it in the car. I say, you think you could shoot somebody? And they say, oh, absolutely. I said, let me tell you something. Till you look a man in the eye and take his life, you don't know what you're talking about. I was sick for 2 days. Each time it got easier. But to say, yeah, I can shoot somebody over and taking your wallet or something.
but like you said, you'll never forget that first one.
See, that's the more brutal part of it. I was so lucky being in 20,000 feet in the air.
Yeah.
Hard for you to
dropping
see their
bombs.
faces,
I
wasn't it,
didn't-
Lee?
I couldn't see them, you know. So it made a big difference.
Still was hard that first, you dropped
Yeah.
that first load.
But was it, like you say, the anticipation of being shot down,
Yeah.
and that hung over you constantly.
Classic example, you guys may not have seen it, but if you ever watched the movie with Brad Pitt in it, Fury,
Yeah, I've seen it.
Oh, yeah, I've
where he
seen
gets that young kid Norman to drive it, he's driver and gunner, and he makes him shoot at one of them Nazis in the back, and because he said, "You're no good to me." He said, "The guy I had that got killed," he said he was the best driver and machine gunner, and he said, "You're no good to me." He said, "This guy is here to kill you. If you don't kill him first, you're going to die." He said, "You're no good to me. You're going to get all of us killed if you can't, you know." But it don't make it any. Especially Norman looked like he was about the age me and Dick were about 18 years old. It's hard. It's a hard thing to know that you've got to do something first or you're going to die. It's hard. You talk about messing with your head, and I don't think it'll ever go away.
Well, you know, going back on, like I said, more or less hand-to-hand combat, which I never was in any of that, but was in artillery.
Yeah.
Well, you know, enemy was out there.
Yeah, you were like
But-
me. You were like me. You didn't see who you hit, but you
Yeah,
knew you were hitting
but you know,
people.
you knew your troops was out there too, you know,
Yeah.
and that was always my biggest fear. What if
yeah.
something happened?
Yeah, that's
You know,
right.
you hit your own troops instead of hit the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, every time we fired, that's the first thing I think of, you know, and then they, you know, come back and say, no, you know, it was a direct hit.
There were millions of friendly fire, not millions, but thousands of
Oh,
friendly
yeah.
fire.
Killed by friendly fire,
Yeah.
especially doing what he's doing, something
Yeah.
50, 60 miles away. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know what.
Well, no,
you had
I-
105s or 155.
105s and 155.
Well, they
what I
wouldn't
was
shoot that
on.
far, but
Yeah.
we had 155 track mounted, and then we had 175s at Swan Log.
Yeah.
Them things had barrels on a mile long.
Yeah.
They would shoot to the DMZ.
Yeah. We
or
had
Swan Log
175s
for
too, but I was never, I mean, I was around them, but I never was, you know, assigned to one of them.
We would go through there on convoy, and you thought an earthquake was shaking your 5-ton tractor and trailer. And big guns would shake the ground so bad.
Well, you had your Air Force above you too.
Right.
They could make mistakes.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
them
I
big
mean-
big B-52s went over every day, just, we was always, go get them, and we saw film footage of Hanoi, the American people, because it was the first war ever, brought in on the 6 o'clock news to your family.
Yeah.
And they were saying baby killers, and like they did at the airport, spit on us, threw dog dew at us, and called us baby killers when we come home. They was bombing. They had totally built Hanoi, rebuilt Hanoi as underground cities. They wasn't bombing nothing. There was nothing. There was nothing for them to blow up.
Blow up, yeah.
But they sent 200 or 300 of them a day. I landed at Guam, going on R&R to Hawaii to meet my first wife. And just bunker after bunker after bunker, them big black vultures is what they look like to me with the big wings swept back. That was an awesome sight to go down through there and see probably 500 of those things sitting along the runway.
Yeah.
But they go over every day, and they were long gone. They probably were bombing Hanoi when you heard the noise. They were so high.
Well, that's why everybody's, at our age now, why are you so hard of hearing? Well, we didn't have ear protection. Matter of fact, I was going through some old pictures last week, and it showed everybody like this, that was only protecting your head, stick your fingers in your ears. And, it was constant. I mean, some type of firing.
I've been doing Zooms with people who are interested in my stories. Mm-hmm. And it suddenly occurred to me, I said, do you realize that they took all of us teenagers and trained us to kill?
That's right.
Basically, that was what was done. And everybody approved it.
Yeah.
Because it was
Until
win or lose.
the news didn't show it properly, Lee.
Yeah.
Like what happened with Vietnam, they just showed what they wanted American people to see, like that Lieutenant Calley. I don't know if you remember that name or not. He was a first lieutenant. He took enemy fire from a suspected enemy village, and his senior officer told him to attack, and they did. And they rifted him out of the army and kicked him out of the army because they killed women and children. That's called war.
That's part of it.
I understand they couldn't, with the Viet Cong threatened or killed their family members and stuff if they told on them for being in their villages, but.
Well, you were victims of public relations.
Oh, yeah.
Politicians had to convince the people back there because you had the TV right on the spot.
And the only reason they didn't do it to you, Lee, is because they wasn't allowed to bring it into homes back when you were in World War II. Yeah. If they had it, they would have done the same thing. There wouldn't been no parades and keys to the city when you come home.
No.
They would have treated you like they did us.
Yeah. Yeah, the TV made it more difficult for politics.
That's true.
And they let on like, the Arvin Rangers were South Vietnamese equivalent to our Green Berets, and they let on like, once we trained them well enough. We had people over there, special forces over there training them in 61, 59 and earlier, later, man. And as soon as we left, 2 weeks, they lost the whole South Vietnam. They had billions of dollars worth of our equipment and couldn't, because they were cowards. I ain't ashamed to say it. I've seen it happen twice. One of their captains is turning the guy. As soon as the first shot was fired, two of his guys got up and ran. He shot them both in the back. Yeah. That happened all the time. They were cowards, but yet they compared them to our Green Berets and Rangers.
Same thing happened. History repeated itself.
That's right.
When Joe Biden withdrew our troops out of Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Same exact
thing.
We had trained and trained and trained those troops.
Killed,
and then jerk them out.
That's right. And as soon as we pulled out of Afghanistan, so I can understand exactly what you're saying.
That's what I told you guys, that you might not want me to say what I think about Vietnam, because I'm not a public speaker. If there was a bunch of people here, I wouldn't be here. Mm-hmm. But I knew Lee and I knew you well, and Dick. I didn't know Dick was coming, but I've known Dick a long time. We're very good friends.
Well, and I think one thing that's helped me as much as anything, talking about being home, was the Vietnam veterans group that we started here. We all got something in common.
Even though they might not have done the same thing you did.
No, but I mean, we were all there.
They were there in some sense, and you could go talk to them. You don't have to draw them pictures.
That's right.
Or read a book to them to get them to understand what happened in Vietnam.
And like I said, probably 90% of us had something different we done over there. Some guys seen a lot worse than I did.
Oh, everybody did.
And, it was just, I mean, like I say,
They made a movie of Vietnam, a very good movie that I liked. Have you seen any of the Vietnam movies?
It's hard
I've
for
seen
me to
some of
watch
them,
them,
yeah.
Lee, but one of my favorites is We Were Soldiers with Mel
That's
Gibson.
it. That's
Yeah.
the one.
yeah,
That was probably the most realistic.
Yes,
Stood
I
there, they
think so
said,
too.
What's the
yeah.
matter, sir? He's standing there, tears running down his cheeks, and he said, I let too many of my men get killed. He said, it should have been me.
I
It
didn't.
bothered him how many of his people got killed.
You know, and them second lieutenants and lieutenants, they were in their early 20s.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it was like little brothers to them that they'd see get,
Yeah.
you know,
Out of college. just out of
sacrificed.
college.
Yeah.
And another thing, Lee, I've watched some of them, I call them crapola movies, like, and don't get me wrong, everything in this movie, I'm on Hamburger Hill,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
everything in it happened over there, but not the way they
They
showed it.
showed it,
That's
right.
the same way with Memphis Belle about
Yeah.
World War II.
Yeah.
Everything happened, but Hollywood crams it all in.
Yes.
I didn't even watch Masters of the Air.
No, I didn't either.
Anything to get people to come back and spend money to watch it.
Sure.
They want to enhance it,
Yeah.
even though it didn't really happen that way at all. Somebody said, did that happen like that, Hamburger Hill? I said, yeah. At Ashaw Valley was a bad place. You know, my outfit went to, like, we always went with 3rd Squadron. I was with headquarters and regiment, and 3rd Squadron, we always went together, and 1st and 2nd Squadron always went together at the different places. And 3rd Squadron was the only one that was ever of the 11th Cav since 1901, is when the 11th Cav was started. They was riding real horses then, not iron ones. And 3rd Squadron was the only one that was ever defeated. And they got defeated at a place called Gia Stone Quarry in Southeast Asia, and they got wiped out. And they had the tanks one day, and the ACAVs, and headquarters and regiment went out there and blowed them off the planet. But they got wiped out, and that's why they lost their colors. It used to be a white horse on this patch instead of a black
Black
horse.
horse, yeah.
That's why it's called a black horse now, because they lost their colors.
You know, and one thing that really bothers me now, I'm 77 years old, but, you know, so many guys that I know, say, 3 years before I went to maybe 5 years after I got back, you know, we've lost them due to things that happened over there. Agent Orange, cancer, diabetes, you know, and it's, I mean, terrible to say, but I mean, you know, if they'd never been there,
So many things
they
that
wouldn't have
causes.
probably had any of that
I think
stuff.
they're recognizing 32 different kinds of cancer now
Oh, yeah.
caused by Agent Orange. And stop and think about this. My base camp was in a 2,000-acre rubber tree plantation, 11th Cav, largest base camp in South Vietnam. And we had a 100-yard kill zone when I first got there, and they, 9/19th engineers dozed that back and cleared that and set it on fire and blowed it up. And we had 450-yard kill zone. Every one of those trees, they'd pay old Papasan $200 for it. They would spray almost every day, at least twice or 3 times a week. And they'd take all the foliage off the first day, and the second day, this is a 60-foot tree, it would be on the ground.
Yeah.
That's how strong that dioxin was, and they wondered why people complained about it. Well, I asked them, and they laughed at me. I said, don't you think maybe it took my hair off too? And you seen the picture with all the hair I had, didn't you? I said, and they just thought that was funny. But I said, if it take a full-grown tree to the ground in 2 days, it's not good for people.
No, I've heard them say that the first thing they did was clear the entire area
Yeah.
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
snipers.
You know,
Yeah.
like Kent said, you know,
Yeah.
not every day, but at least 3 times a week, they're
Yeah.
flying over spraying.
Well, they sprayed us with DDT in World War II.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
now, one thing, Lee, I don't agree with, that giving guys 8 miles out in the ocean in the Navy disability money for Agent Orange. You can't spray out in the ocean.
No, what happened with that is the rivers in Vietnam carried that out into the ocean.
Yes.
And then the ships passed through it,
Yes.
and they suck that water in. They
In.
desalinate
That
it,
wa- okay.
and they purify it with
I
chlorine.
thought they were claiming they were spraying.
No,
by-
no.
No, but it doesn't come out of the water when all they do
Right.
is purify it with the chlorine.
Right.
They desalinate it, and that's what those guys are drinking and showering with on board those ships.
Yeah.
That's where that came from. That being the service officer for the county,
Yeah.
the question was asked, and I understand it fully. It's like, why do we have the red tide in the Gulf of Mexico? Because everything in the Mississippi River is carried out there, all the fertilizer.
Yeah.
and contaminants are
I
carried
never
out
thought
into
about
the
that.
ocean.
I thought when they first said that, they meant they were swimming in it, and I said, stay out of the water.
No.
But for getting it in their
No.
intakes on the ship and stuff.
And they have to clean those aircraft when they come back. So the first aircraft passes over on the carriers. That first aircraft passes over, drops the bombs. The aircraft following behind it gets all that dust on it.
Sure.
And those plane captains, when you get back on board ship, they have to clean those aircraft. And here we go again. They're getting contaminated with the stuff that was blown up by the bombs as they're dropping.
Yeah.
So the Navy guys, they got a pretty good dose of it
Yes, they
too,
did.
just in a different way.
Well, like I said, the guys that patrolled the river, you know, they was the same way.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, you
You know, I
know,
mean, it was,
Brown water or Navy. like that, what they
Historically,
call it.
that's where they first started using Agent
right,
Orange
along the
along the
riverbanks.
riverbanks because
Mekong Delta.
they were
Yeah.
getting ambushed along the riverbanks. The river patrol units were, and it was a Navy admiral that ordered the spraying along the river. And hey, this is working so well, let's use it out there to save the Army troops.
Yeah.
My late cousin, Ronald Hackler, he was an engineer in Vietnam. And they were the ones that were having to spray a lot of the stuff out there to clear the routes.
And that was
so
their
on.
job. They had no-
Exactly. Everybody had a job in the military.
Yeah,
Well, supposed to have.
We all had some kind of a job.
that's right. And, you know, you may not have liked it, but, you know, that was what you was assigned
There
to,
again.
so you had to do it. I mean,
It's kind of like what Lee was talking about a while ago, you know, taking other people's lives, dropping those bombs, although you never see it, looked him in the eye. He knew he was doing it, but
Yeah.
that's what it was either that or they were going to take America over and they'd been dropping bombs on
for
us,
us,
you know.
yeah.
we flew into it to drop them. We flew into the
Yeah,
flak.
you
to
had
drop
to,
'em.
yeah.
That was the worst part for those,
Yeah.
those bombers. I watched a show the other night about the 17s and the B-29s,
Mm-hmm.
Flying Fortress. You know, they could keep the fighters off the bomb squads, you know, but how do you get out of that flak? I mean, that just continues, this, you know, blowing holes in everything they had. I forget how many gun turrets they had on them B-29s. That's why it's called the Flying Fortress. It's
Yeah,
like
we had 13 different guns.
you
But
had
but those
29s.
But those artillery shells down there had, those shells they could set, they had radar on the guns, on the cannons, and they could set that shell to explode at our altitude.
Is that right?
I just learned that.
Yeah, because they did
Couple
most of the
years ago.
damage. If you watch the movies, you see that big black puff of smoke out there from fragmentation. They did most of their damage, but not ever hitting the airplane. Just the fragmentation, you know, was blowing it up. Like he said, they had it set at the right height to blow it up right in your face.
Were you ever shelled by Dick's outfit or anybody?
No.
Were you ever shelled?
No, we had our own. I told you we had our own 105s in 3rd Squadron, and we had track-mounted 155,
Oh.
and we had gunships. So no, but we did get mortared every night.
Oh, mortar, yeah, that's the danger.
You
Yeah,
could
we
set,
got a lot
you
of
could
mortar.
set your watch by it at 9 o'clock, and Brad said he would ask me about it, but I'll volunteer it. We bought this little tape recorder. I bought 2 of them instead of writing letters. All APO was free, and I'd do these little reel tapes and send them to my wife, and she could hear my voice. See, and then she would record one and send it back to
Back to
me.
you.
Because mail was free. You could go.
Yeah.
You could mail 100 rolls of film if you wanted to. Film was free. Mailing was free. Anyway,
Everything was free.
here come you could tell incoming.
Oh, yeah.
They whistle different than your mortar going out, but they had big ones like our 4-point deuce. They had big ones. Heard it coming in. We ran to our bunker in front of our tent, and I bowed at the waist like that to let my buddy Kenneth Irvine. We both had the name Kenneth, and I let him go in first. And mortar round went off 10 feet from me, and I got scars all the way down my right leg. That's how I got a Purple Heart. Because Greg Stubbe asked me how I got. I love that man. He is a
Yeah.
hell of a man.
It was a shell.
And he said, "How'd you get your Purple Heart?" And I said, "Didn't duck in time." I let my buddy go in first, and I about got my leg blown off. And if my sergeant hadn't made me, I wasn't even going to go to the med, the 37th med. It just burned a lot, it stung, but
Yeah.
it didn't. You know, it didn't. He made me go to the 37th med, and
That sudden thing that you are always waiting for and you expect every action.
Yeah.
But then another traumatic thing for me, I've always been, I don't like to see other people get hurt. That's why it made it really hard for me to shoot at someone. But when taking Benoit back, my buddy went down, Larry Pisker, he was on the right M60, and I was on the left, and he went down with a bullet in his left shoulder. Blood was squirting 6 feet in the air out of his shoulder. I put a Medipack on him and slapped him with morphine. It was like a little trigger, like a T, and you held it between two of your fingers, smack him on the leg like a, you could have stuck your finger, your barrel, or my machine gun in his shoulder, and he wouldn't have cared after that. And I just went back to shooting. But it was hard for me when he first went down. That blood was shooting out of his shoulder. That's what I said. Nobody knows unless they were there and seen what went on in a teenager's mind in Southeast Asia, how bad it messed with your head. And like I said, I'll never forget those guys getting burned up. Never, ever.
But that's why we have sergeants, because you're a 19-year-old. You don't realize how much infection is a threat in the jungle at 19. But your sergeant does. So
Yeah.
I understand why he made you go do that.
Well, I got during the Tet Offensive, I got my stripes, hard 5. It didn't make me like it any better.
The only time I was in an Army hospital was when I was ordered to go there by my sergeant. It wasn't a wound, it was strep throat with 103-degree temperature. I wasn't going to go.
I'll be over tomorrow.
Suck it up, Buttercup. No, I'm telling you, I asked you, did you want to go? Now I'm telling you got to go. So I know where you're coming from with that.
We had 37th Medical Group in our base camp, 919th Engineered, and a third of the 5th Cav stayed with us about 6 months out of the year. That's why we had such a big base camp. But that's why I told you I like to stay out in the field better. You can't stay out in the field the whole time we're on the microphone. I don't like to talk about that because it wasn't good. There was not any good days out there.
No. Anytime you're in the bush.
Yeah.
And I told Brad about it, and I think I've talked to Dick about it. We'd put an M60 tank in front when we was on search and destroy and busting jungle, and put 90 millimeter canister round in it. That's what the size gun the M60s had. Well, they got 120s now on the Abrams, don't they? For sure they're 120 millimeter.
I'm not sure.
And they'll shoot on the run too, where ours wouldn't. But we just lay the barrel down on that baby, and it'd make a road from here to past the courthouse. And then we didn't get fire ants down and burning you up. Them things set you on fire because of your antennas and stuff, because we blowed all the trees and the bushes down.
Yeah.
We just cut a road and just move it up and do it again. There weren't many people going to stand there to snipe or shoot at you with an M60 blowing holes in the forestry.
That's right.
You get rid of the snipers real fast.
Yeah.
We're talking about an M60 tank versus an M60 machine gun. at
Right.
this point.
Right, yeah. 60 tons, why it's called an M60.
Right.
It's actually a Sherman. We had some Shermans. What was the first ones? They started with an S2 that they had late World War I and World War II. But we had some older Shermans, and they only weighed 45,000 pounds. I just call them M60s because that was the nomenclature number for them.
Correct.
Was M60 because they weighed 60 tons.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of them had, most of them were diesel, but some of them had, some of the ACABs had 327 Chevrolets in
thought they had
them.
gasoline
They would
motors,
fly. But if you broke a track at 45 miles an hour, you were going to die.
Yeah.
You
That
didn't
thing
wanna-
was going to go.
You didn't want to be out there. Because I got to drive them once in a while. That wasn't my job, but I got to drive both of them. And I didn't like the tanks. They were too awkward and cumbersome, and they didn't, when we first started running convoys to Long Bend, we would put an M60 tank. It would take all day to go 60 miles.
Well, yeah,
Because
because
the
they did.
M60 wouldn't run very
I'm going to
fast.
say, they just kind of
So
creep
we
along.
started using MP Jeeps to run our convoys, but they could take them out with RPG rockets. So we ended up just running a cab in the front with a 50 caliber and 2 M60s on it, and one in the back, of the truck convoy. I don't know, just things are popping into my head. I don't know if these people would be interested in them or not, but weird things like every time you got sniped at, you had to get out of your truck and jump in the ditch. I said, the letter P on that, I ain't jumping in that ditch full of punji stakes.
Well, that's it.
Those
You never
things
knew what
those
you're going to
things
jump into.
That's why they shot at you where they did, so you would get out and jump in the ditch.
What's the stake? Tell us what the punji stakes are. Explain the punji stakes.
I'll explain about, try to clean it up. They're sharpened bamboo
Bamboo stick.
stakes dipped in human dung and feces.
And they're driven into the ground.
Yeah, the, you know,
Drive
with
them
the point up.
Drive them into the point up, and when you jump on them, it's sticking to your foot, and you get infected, and you lose your leg. If you don't get medical treatment pretty fast. Or if you
Gangrene
jump
set
in
right
it,
in.
jump in it in your body in a ditch, you're probably gonna die.
Yeah.
Because the stakes, some of them be shorter, like a foot, some of them be like 2 foot, you know, and you jump in there in that ditch. So one of the times we got sniped at, I jumped out of my truck and I said, I'm not jumping in that ditch. I was in a 5-ton tractor, a 40-foot empty bed to haul ammo on, and they call them S&Ts, 40-foot S&T. I don't know what that stood for. Anyway, I crawled under my truck. Well, the battery cable was messed up on it. It had 4 12-volt batteries, and they run off 48 volts, a deuce and a half did. And one of the battery cables where they jumped across one another was messed up, and I knew it wouldn't start. I didn't want to get left behind. So I got under my truck and left it running.
Yeah.
Well, somebody struck a match to me. I'd have went up like burning doo-doo over there.
Yeah.
You had to use a whole roll of toilet paper or 5 newspapers to get to,
Fire going.
and it was a essy job until it started burning. Once it got lit
Yeah.
good, it wasn't a bad job at all. But
Yeah, it was so humid all the time.
Oh,
yeah, but I didn't. I was soaked in diesel, or that 465 cubic inch Hercules diesel in that 5-ton tractor. And, it was leaking fuel all over me. So, but I didn't have to shut it off, and I didn't jump in bungee stakes. So.
You guys mentioned how much weight you lost, your condition of your body when you came out of that.
Yeah, you got dehydrated because you had nothing.
I weighed about 120 when I come home. I mean, I was literally skin and
I
bones.
told Brad I weighed 185 when I went over there, and 165 in that picture when I come home, because you couldn't drink the water, and the beer was pitiful.
Yeah.
I mean,
Hot.
all they had was, where I was at, was different places. Had different, Budweiser, Schlitz, which ain't what we called it. Kinda
PBR,
sound
we
like-
had PBR.
See, we did, and then we had
No.
we had OB Korean lager beer. It was real dark,
Blatz,
thick.
we had Blatz. Blatz beer is what we had.
Yeah, it's probably as bad as Schlitz. 'Cause
Yeah.
it gave you
It give you the,
gave you diarrhea.
Oh, well, it was probably weak too. It probably wasn't strong.
yeah, you had to have a church key to open it, so.
I got to where I drank their beer. It was called Bough. That's 33 in Vietnamese. And it was 12% alcohol. It was, where American beer was only 6.
Yeah.
So I started drinking them little girls that walk along with a bucket of ice, and they'd have 2 beers stuck in it, give them 50 cents, a quarter apiece, and you can have a beer. Whenever, excuse me, whenever they stopped the convoy, either that or a Pepsi, and I was afraid of the Pepsis because I didn't figure it didn't have any alcohol. It wouldn't kill all the germs and bugs and stuff in it. 'Cause
So you had to get the civilians selling you beer.
yeah, walking along the convoy when it was stopped, some of them sell sandwiches, but you didn't want to eat their.
No,
If you seen a dog over there, it looked like a greyhound that was on a dead run because they ate them.
yeah, oh, yeah.
They ate everything that moved over there except the rats, but they didn't eat them over there. You know what? They give us cans of lighter fluid, and we'd catch them in these little traps that the Vietnamese made, and we would set them on fire. Some of them were as big as dogs.
Oh, yeah.
I had one get on my chest one night on guard duty. It was that long, and it was sitting there like he was sharpening his knife and fork, like he was going to have me for supper. That's how big they were, and that's not a lie.
A rat?
Yeah, oh, yeah, they was some big ones over
When you
there.
went on guard duty in a bunker,
Yeah,
you put 4 guys in them. 2 of them sat on the bench, one on the M60, one with the clickers,
Yeah.
Claymore clicker, and the other 2 guys for 2 hours could do whatever they wanted to do. And later in the night, you got tired. Well, I laid down, and I felt something pull on my fatigue shirt, and I raised up, and I swear to God, I nearly tore that bunker down getting out of there. It was horrible to have that big thing sitting on your chest. If it bit you, you'd have had rabies.
That's the thing.
So we catch them in them little traps, and instead of letting them go, so our sergeant said, I said, what are we going to do with these, Sarge? He said, let them go. And he said, why would we be catching them if we're going to let them go? And he said, here. And they'd give everybody a can. What was the yellow cans of lighter fluid that had the red-headed indent on it? Anyway, they'd give you a can of lighter fluid.
yeah, I
just
can't remember these.
Soak him down with lighter fluid and set him on fire.
Set 'em on fire.
They didn't come back and chew on you the next day.
Well, we had trouble with them. We made traps too, because, being on a base, we had a hooch we lived in. But we had trouble with rats coming in, at nighttime. And, we set
Well, the
traps.
mess hall would be their target, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, anything that were food or if you threw trash,
Yeah.
just like in American City too.
Yeah.
you didn't want to throw any, but you didn't have food. You didn't have cheeseburgers from McDonald's or anything, so you couldn't throw food
No,
down.
but, you know, they,
You had rations to travel with,
Sea rations.
sea rations. Okay.
You had K's, right?
Yeah, we had K and C.
They were even worse than C's.
Yeah.
C's were bad.
Two
Only thing
free
I could eat
cigarettes.
only thing I could eat out of sea rations were the cookies. Of course, I smoked then, and I'd keep the
Cigarettes.
You only got 4 cigarettes in a little bit of pack about
Right.
that wide. The cookies and the beanie weenies. The rest of that
Yeah.
stuff I would trade off or throw away. It was terrible. Green eggs, powdered eggs with ham in them or something. Oh, it's awful.
oh, that ham was.
Yeah, it was
I look forward to the pound cake. We still
Well, yeah,
had,
now, once in a while, we would get
once in a while, yeah.
a pound cake, but
yeah, we were getting the leftover stuff. When I first went in,
Yeah.
we were getting leftover stuff from Vietnam. We were eating it. I know what you're talking about, but it was the pound cake that I always look forward
well,
to. I
sometimes
like
when they
that.
brought our rations, you know, they'd been opened up, and I think whoever done it, I think
think
they took
who-
the pound cakes out.
They probably
Kept
did.
for themselves.
Whoever was distributing that
Yeah.
stuff was taking the good stuff out of them, yeah.
That pound cake is good stuff.
Some
Yeah.
of that on that ACAB, headquarters 30 with my ACAB, some of that stuff on there, I was there 13 months and it was never, I don't know how many years that had been on that ACAB. Ever since the 11th cab had been over there, I guess. Probably was loaded on in the States.
But you talk about getting a taste of home in Afghanistan when they would send out the rations. Evansville, Indiana was listed on there a lot of times.
Really?
Stuff made in
Was it
Evansville,
boxed
Indiana.
up or made there?
No, it was made there.
Yeah.
But
Huh.
Wow.
we would get that.
Well, I guess they just made it down there, I guess. I mean, it was
Yeah.
a distributor.
Sure.
Yeah, in World War II, we had lines, and you were safe behind the lines. You guys didn't have that.
No.
You
You wasn't
had- you just had
safe. You wasn't
stations.
safe anywhere.
You just had camps out here and a camp
Yeah.
over here and a
Yeah.
camp over there. So our Jeep could deliver sea rations.
Down the line, yeah, I've seen it in the movies.
Uh-huh.
Our
Okay.
biggest thing was, I mean, we had a mess hall, but you know, if your supplies didn't come in, you know, then you was stuck with sea rations.
Yeah.
You know, you might, eat there for 3 days, and then you might not eat there for a week, because they just couldn't get the plane in to drop it. Same way with mail. You might get mail every day for 2 weeks, and then you may not get mail for 3 weeks. The planes just couldn't land.
Because everything was scattered and
Yeah.
just
We had,
stations.
I've told you before, the 37th Medical Group, only one captain doctor, when it was a woman. But we would go up there to eat of a morning, because we didn't, you had nothing to eat. So you had to, that's the most important meal of your day for when I was in base camp. This is how bad, I tell people, you can't understand what it did to 18, 19-year-old kid to have to sit and look out the screen wire out the side of a tent with wooden sides up about this high and look out there and see how many feet were sticking out of the metal connexes, how many people got killed the night before. It's pretty hard to digest your food to have to sit there and look at that, but they were, because they died because that was the hospital, like MASH Hospital, 37th Medical Group, was the only place that cooked in our base camp that had food. And if you didn't eat there, you didn't get anything to eat. You'd be eating them powdered eggs and green ham, but you had to look and see. Their boots would be sticking out there because they're too long to close the door on the metal
yeah.
connexes. And, sometimes they were Viet Cong or the Vietnamese, but most of the time they were ours, because what are they going to do with them? Stack them up and let the flies blow them? They got to put them somewhere.
Someone told me that they had crematories. They burned the bodies.
May have,
We
Lee, but
did.
not where I was at.
No, me neither.
One Vietnam vet told me he worked in one. He told
Is
me
that
a
right?
Horrible story.
Must have been in one of the bigger towns.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd have to
Like
be.
Long Bend or Benoit or something like that.
Yeah.
'Cause they didn't out there where I was at.
No, out where you were there.
No, they just put them in a body bag and,
Bless their hearts, it
Yeah.
about to choke me up, but the 2 guys in front of me got shot with an RPG rocket with airplane fuel. They had a crematory of their own.
yeah.
I never seen anybody burn up so fast in my life. I can still smell that. It's just an awful smell.
Yeah.
You said a lot of them in World War II, Lee, but you didn't have to stay there and smell it.
Well, what our big worry was, empty bunks in the barracks.
Yeah.
We go on a mission and
That'd been bad
somebody
enough.
wouldn't come back.
But to go eat breakfast and have to
Yeah.
look at their feet
Yeah,
sticking
yeah,
out the
yeah.
Connex, that's what I
Well,
said.
they
So
came in and
damaging.
cleaned it up real fast, but It was bad.
Well, yeah, you just knew, you know, they were gone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And, you know, Dick was the same age, you know, basically we're the same age, but I thought I was older than him, but I guess I'm not.
I was 77 last month.
I'm pretty sure I told you happy birthday then on Facebook.
You may have, I don't know, I got several, I
See,
know.
I'm 77 in September, so I am a little older, but I thought we were like a year and a half apart. Anyway, it just, it's horrible what it does to your mind, and like I said, who do you go talk to about it? We both went to psychiatrists, and that guy, Wally Schellenberger, he's dead now, but he was a good listener. He would just sit and listen. Once in a while, he would say something that might trigger something in my mind, you know, maybe a release to get rid of it. Like I said, our organization helped me tremendously, but, you know, he just sat there and didn't say very much, but what can he do?
Well, that's the
You
same way
can't fix a broken head.
I seen a woman, I can't remember, her last- Nancy was her first name, and she always told me, she said, you know, don't call me doctor or anything, just call me Nancy. And I don't know, she was probably 15, maybe 20 years younger than me, but, you know, she knew her stuff. And, you know, she, you know, like out of breath, you know, if you're having one of those bad, you know, take deep breaths, you know, and just try to clear your head.
Last 2 or 3 years now, my doctor's in Bloomington Outpatient Clinic.
Yeah, that's what
John Dustin, and he sends me, like I had a stress test last year, he sends me to Bedford to get it done. He's, everything I tell him I think I need. He got me to laughing one day because he just sat down on the stool because he called me and I was asleep at home, and I didn't recognize his voice. I didn't see it. It said medical, but he said, "What do you think of your doctor, John Dustin?" I said, "I like him, but I said, he worries about the wrong things." I said, "I wish he would pay attention to me." And then he said, "Well, you are talking to your doctor." I said, "Uh-oh, I don't know if I want to go back and see him again or not." But when I went back to see him, he just sat on a stool in front of me and just kept staring at me like that. I got tickled. I said, "What the hell's the matter with you, Doc?" And he said, "I'm waiting for you to tell me what you want me to fix." And I don't know how long, I bet he sat there 30 minutes before, and I told him I needed help. You know, I think I had bronchial infections all the time and stuff, you know, and I thought it was COPD, but they tested me. They do that breath test at Bloomington's, COPD, 2.5 hours of blowing in them tubes and stuff.
Yeah.
It like wore me out. She kept saying, "Hold it, hold it, hold it." It's kind of like taking a breathalyzer, and the cops telling them guys, "Don't quit blowing." And it took me forever to get to where I could ring that bell. Because you just got to, you know, you got to, I don't have that kind of, you know, and I'd smoked for 30 years, but I've been quit now for 35, so I don't think it was smoking. But they said I didn't have COPD, so it had to be bronchitis.
But I think the VA will get better. Our new secretary, Secretary Collins, he's an Air Force chaplain.
Yeah.
Good.
He was, and the chaplains, I've never had bad service from a chaplain in the military. The military chaplains are always first rate in my book. So if we get that, it's
make a big difference.
make a big difference, yes.
Yeah, Brad got all the answers, and he knows he's the guy to contact, and the guy that can take the shortcuts, etc. But this program you're doing, just like you talked today, this is going to help.
Yeah.
This will help if we can get people to watch it.
Well, believe it or not,
going
maybe
back-
it helped me just saying some of this stuff.
Yeah.
I
Well,
said to very
That's the
people
other
to
thing.
talk.
You guys should, when you meet, you should have round tables and just sit and shoot the
Yeah.
bill and tell.
Go back
Because
on the
if you
VA, I've
if you
had,
talk about it.
I've had 3 surgeries up there. Of course, I get my glasses, my hearing aids up there, and, you know, people say, "Well, I wouldn't go up there." They've all been great to me. I know the 2 doctors while I had my surgery, they actually were from Methodist Hospital, and, you know, I had a double aneurysm.
Yeah.
And, you know, he come in and told me what he's gonna do and everything else. Well, the next morning, I was supposed to stay overnight. Well, they took an x-ray and it showed a spot in my lung. And he said, "I'm afraid you're getting pneumonia." So they give me an IV to, you know, well, the next morning x-ray, it was gone. So, you know, but I mean, you know, they could have sent me home and, you know, I
can
had double
see-
pneumonia
I
before I
can
knew it too,
I can
so.
see a big change in it in the last 2 or 3
Oh,
years.
yeah.
Because now they're allowing them to send them, like I said, to Bloomington.
Oh, yeah.
And Bedford, and the VA's paying for it, but there's a few things they still won't pay for, but you have to go to Rowdy-Bush or refuse to go.
And what we've got a problem here in southern Indiana. You go to northern Indiana, about halfway, not quite, but about halfway between Indianapolis and Fort Wayne is Marion, Indiana. they've got a VA hospital there. What have we got between Indianapolis and Louisville in southern Indiana? Nothing. You go to northern Indiana, they've got a VA cemetery in Marion, Indiana.
Yep, they do.
We've got a cemetery in Madison, Indiana. But the Indiana Veterans Home's in West Lafayette. What good is it for people in southern Indiana? It's 3 hours for Bedford, let alone if you live in the third largest city in the state, which is Evansville. We need some infrastructure in southern Indiana.
I totally agree.
Scottsburg, they've got a clinic in Scottsburg. What have we got in Bedford? Scottsburg's a lot smaller than we are, and they're a lot closer to Louisville than we are to Indianapolis.
See, I kept hoping they'd do something maybe with Dunn, you know, when it closed down.
Yes, and I pitched
I
that
know
to
you
Trey
did.
Hollingsworth. You were probably at the meeting when we pitched that to Trey Hollingsworth to turn that into a VA contract hospital. Why Dunn instead of IU Health? Because Dunn Hospital took care of babies.
Yeah.
Expectant mothers could get treatment at Dunn. They can't get it at IU Health here in Bedford. And believe it or not, we've got a lot of female veterans, and I promise you we will have female veterans on this program before we are finished.
Oh, yeah.
Coming down to time here, Lee, do you have anything further
No,
you
I
want
think
to
it's been
ask?
very good for us and good for it to talk like this and good for the public to understand and hear more. But I think it's a very good program. And we'll,
I just want to say one more thing, Brad. You know, we did. I mean, coming home, you know, it was terrible because, you know, like I did. I literally got spit on in the airport leaving Fort Lewis, Washington. But, you know, 15, 20 years, I don't know what it was, you know, I think people more our age got, you know, these people served, you know. They didn't go there because they wanted to. And, you know, and things finally come around, you know, they had parades for us and different things, you know. And, I mean, anytime I go anywhere this day and age, I got a hat on. Like today, I was at Johnny's Junction, some guy come in and said, oh, thank you for your service.
Yeah.
Well, 20 years ago, they could care less where you'd been or what you was in.
They took your hat and used it to wipe with.
Yeah, but
now the cap is what I pushed. I may have popularized it because I've been wearing this cap. I've created this character. I've created this World War II character. I'm a World War II character.
well, yeah,
But you have to be proud of what you did.
that's right.
And you have to show it all.
Well, John Doan's a prime example.
Everybody
You
else
never
did it.
see John unless he got a Vietnam
If they
veteran's
don't
cap
lump it,
on.
they can like it. They don't like
Yeah.
don't like it, they can lump it.
When we first come back, only my immediate family knew that I had been in Vietnam. I didn't tell anybody. And somebody said here a while back, they said, Purple Heart? I didn't know you got a Purple Heart. I said, it ain't something you run home and tell somebody
No.
when they're throwing dog dew on you and
Yeah.
spitting on you. You don't run home and say, look here, I got a Purple Heart because I didn't duck in time, you know. They didn't care. Like Dick said, they could have cared less that you're a decorated veteran. Didn't matter to them.
Well, as a younger veteran, I want to say thank you to the Vietnam veterans, not only for your service, but what you did after the fact. We all know, the younger veterans, that it was you fellas that stepped up to the plate and said, you're not treating these younger veterans the
Right.
same way you treated us.
Yeah.
We know that.
I think that, Brad,
thank you.
I think that's called paying it forward, isn't it? Because, and I'll tell you something else that nobody ever mentions. Me and Dick talked about this one time. You never hear anything about the Korean veterans.
No.
Think about those poor bastards, excuse me again, you folks, walking out Chosin Reservoir with Chinese and North Koreans both sniping them and shooting them in the back over 100 miles and 50 below zero weather. You don't ever hear about that. You know, they pay them less respect than
They did us.
than they do us, you know.
Well, thank you, Dick.
Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Kent, for being
Yeah.
here. I want to thank you,
Thank
Lee,
you, yeah.
for being a co-host again. Joe, behind the camera, Joe Voris, thank you very
Yes,
much.
sir, Joe.
We didn't put you to sleep, did we, Joe?
I'm Brad Bough, Vice President of the Lawrence County Historical Society and Museum, and I want to thank all of you for tuning in this time. And as always, if you love your freedom, be sure to thank a veteran. So long, everyone.